All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call, and I am joined by my brother, the Gritty Broman. How is Brent?
Brent is well, thank you.
And today we are doing a podcast, just a Q&A podcast. I've been in and out of town a lot lately, traveling, and so the fall is always crazy busy. And there's been a lot of questions coming through YouTube and through email, and I wanted to answer those questions on a show just to sort of get them all out and I think they're beneficial and useful to everyone.
Some of these you did give a personal reply to already, but I still think it's just good for people to know.
Good conversation point. It was really, there were a lot of good questions, in fact. So I told Brent, I'm like, let's do a Q&A. It's been a while, and let's address these questions that have come in. So before we get started, I want to remind people, go use the code GRITTY at Mountain Ops to save on shipping. And also be looking, we're going to start doing some coupon codes that give you 20% off and things like that. It's probably not going to happen now. Right now is Opstober. So Mountain Ops is running deals right now. If you just go and look, you can find some stuff, but yeah, get free shipping. Use the code GRITTY. Also, get some sissy sticks, carbon fiber poles, aluminum lower. Great value.
Bryce was here the other day.
Bryce is the owner of Sissy Sticks.
Yeah, and he was asking me, the only thing he's really tried has been Ignite. And I was like, Yeti's pretty awesome. Like, if you're trying to get out of the backcountry, Yeti's pretty awesome. And I was like, and then I really like the Blaze Shots. And then I really like the Renew. And he's like, well, bullet to the head, what's one that you would like? Slumber. Hands down, Slumber. Like, if there's only one Mountain Ops product I could have, Slumber.
No, I don't. I sleep. I'm a sleep alpha, so I don't need Slumber.
I snore a lot, and Daisy kicks me. So, I got to be able to power through. I need that Slumber.
Slumber is great for the backcountry, especially. I think, especially on a backpack hunt, you're blowing up a little air mattress. This ain't your Tempur-Pedic at home. You're in a sleeping bag. It can be cold. It can get windy. Your tent can whip in the wind. Just all these things. Having Slumber. Plus, it's nice to drink a little hot chocolate just before you go to bed.
I'm all about that chai, dude.
Or the chai. Sleepy time chai. It is nice to drink it and then just crash. And there's a little melatonin, a little zinc, magnesium, things in there that really help your muscles relax and help you with recovery. My doctor wants me taking more melatonin at night and just daily. But I think, it's great. It helps you just get that deep sleep.
The problem I have with it, though, is I can only drink it at night.
I think people need to mess with dosages.
Yes, half a dosage gets me to sleep. A full dose gives me a tight 10. No one's disturbing me. I am sleeping beauty.
And everyone's a little different. Like, you're also, I don't know how much heavier than I am, but you got some
got
body
a biscuit
mass.
and a half, yeah.
So it's like, for me, I think weight, if you're a woman, a full packet, and I use the travel packets for the backcountry. Those full packets, man, they are potent. It's a little too much for me. It actually makes me fall asleep and then wake up. So I'll sleep 5 hours and then I'm just kind of awake. I kind of feel refreshed a little bit by the time 8 hours have passed, but that's not the goal. The goal is to really sleep through. Some people have different results. So I actually like a half a packet or 2/3 when I'm in the backcountry, and that knocks me completely out. Lampers loves the whole packet. He likes it at home. I really only use it when I'm hunting, maybe once a week. After a heavy workout sometimes, I'll feel really tired and restless. My heart rate will still stay a little elevated just from crushing it, and I'll have a little trouble falling asleep. Yeah, then I just take a month. I'll just take a whole dose and just crash.
I want Mountain Ops to make a whole line that's just flavored stuff. I want flavored teas to sleepy time, so I don't have to actually go to sleep.
Right.
I want flavored Ignites that are just flavoring.
How about you just drink water, bro?
Water sucks. On so many levels, water sucks.
Anyway, I would say gun to the head. It's hard for me to beat just Citrus Bliss Ignite at the moment. But I cycle on and off, as I tell people all the time. I find, I want the stuff to be effective. It's like people who drink coffee every day. Well, how about you do a sober October?
Oh, good luck with that.
On coffee, and then come back to it in November and see how that coffee is much more effective. So you're messing with adrenal glands and things like that. I think it's good to play them up for a while and then back off, and and you get some performance results. And but you're not messing too much with your biochemistry day after day. Anyway, sign up for the newsletter. We're going to do some giveaways. Do that. Okay, let's get to questions. Question number 1 is from Duncan. Duncan. IDDAD Dad Duncan. Anyway, on YouTube, he said, even if harvest numbers don't change with more hunters, the elk do become very educated and do change the way they respond to calls, if they even respond at all. I'm adding a little bit. Hunter numbers do affect the quality of the hunt, whether you want to admit it. Idaho was overrun by hunters this year compared to even a few years ago. Now, this is in response to my comment about just I understand people's standpoint where they don't like to educate people about hunting, or they don't like people to know about hunting areas, because especially in their state, like send them all to Montana. Don't tell them about Idaho. Don't tell them about Colorado. Just tell them about Utah. It's like every state person seems to have a little bit of anger toward me whenever I hunt their state. And
there's a bit of hate thrown your way, a little shade.
And my comment was, in the end, it's about helping people overall, getting people to go out and hunt, and we should share that resource across the board. And I have found lots of public land opportunities over the counter that are great. And I do run into people back there, but not as much. In this case, and I mentioned harvest numbers typically don't change. You still kind of have the same people seem to be successful, and recurring. So even with a huge influx of hunters in an area, it's not like more animals died. I'm hunting. There's lots of units in Idaho that are quota. So they cap it. Same with Colorado, some other states where they only sell so many tags, and then when they're gone, they're gone. And so in a sense, it's capped and limited so that you don't have any change in the number of hunters, but the tags sell out faster, or they're harder to get because it's just first come, first serve. When they're sold, they're gone. So in that case, it's not relevant, especially to the podcast that we did on the subject. But I don't disagree that hunter numbers affect the quality of a hunt. I never ever claim they don't. Quality of a hunt is harder the more hunters that are out there. That's the difference between public land and private land. You go onto a private ranch and it's just you and the elk, and that's going to make it a whole lot easier.
When you're the only one putting on pressure.
So I never claim that hunter numbers don't affect the quality of a hunt. That's not something I would ever not admit. But it does offer a certain amount of reward. Being able to do it despite the hunter numbers, finding a way to make it happen despite the challenges of it being public land. That's the whole point. Idaho was overrun by hunters this year compared to even a few years ago. I would say I ran into a couple of hunters where I was at. Last year, I ran into a few hunters more. I didn't like the area I was in last year. I found too many people there, for sure. This year, I went to a different spot. Last year, I wasn't successful either. I was right on top of elk so many times, and 3 or 4 hunters would crash into our setup after we'd work a bull for 45, 50 minutes. I was there with Corey Jacobson. He's like, I will never hunt here again. So, absolutely. But guess what? I didn't go back. I found someplace else. I think that there's, somebody wrote to Ryan the other day, Lampers and I, and just said, you guys are scumbags. You guys, basically, will ruin hunting for the rest of us because you share your bear hunt and other things, and people now are going to come and bear hunt. And they said, what's going to happen if people figure out where you guys are at and where you hunt? And now
they're going to go, I'm not going to do that.
Well, there is that.
Oh, man.
Some of it's just physically.
Ryan goes, I will start hunting after 10 miles.
Or 20.
Or 20. I mean, that's insane.
So
it's not like he doesn't even start hunting until he gets to the point where people are going to quit.
And so what I was going to say to that is when people say that to Ryan, he's like, okay, they overrun my spot. I'll go find another one. Okay, I'll just keep finding spots nobody's gone before. I'll just keep going. Okay, great. They took my spot. I got another one. There's a billion of them. He finds them every year in a different state, in a different area. They're all out there. There's so much out there. Use some creativity. Learn how to look at Google Earth. Go and put your feet on the ground. Explore some areas. And, I think often there's too much emphasis on the spot you're hunting and less emphasis on how to kill or what it takes to kill, which in general often is just determination and mental toughness. I talked to Corey. He's like, that was an interesting conversation with Corey Jacobson. He's like, look, people who are super determined are the people who are going to do it. Others are going to stop. It's not a priority. Maybe.
Yep.
They're willing to put in X amount of effort, and after that, it just isn't. It is not important enough to make the required pains and sacrifice to make it happen.
Makes me think about intern Brad. Dude's a killer. Kills stuff every year.
Yes.
But look at the sacrifices that guy makes. He doesn't sleep. When does he sleep?
Yeah, and he grinds. He's
oh man,
he's a machine.
Those Idaho farm boys, dude.
Yeah.
They're not scared of work. They're scared not to work.
Yeah. And so anyway, I don't disagree. To summarize, I don't disagree that the hunter numbers affect the quality of a hunt. I also will say to that there are a lot of great places to hunt. Keep looking. If your spot gets hit, go to another spot. There's more to it than trying to stop everyone from enjoying what we love. And I just think it's more important. You got to put, I guess, the future of hunting and people ahead of that. It's funny. I sat down with my friends over at Leupold the other day, and I was saying Idaho sold out of their deer tags. I think the first time in their elk tags. Many of those didn't sell out. They even had tags available in the season, even last year. I think every elk tag in the state was taken within a couple of days of the tag sale, them going on sale. Other states are the same. Everyone's experiencing just a major increase in the number of hunters. Meanwhile, we're being told in mainstream media and on NPR and other places, even in magazines like Field and Stream, the hunter numbers are on an all-time decline, and hunting is becoming anachronistic and it's no longer something that Americans do anymore. Meanwhile, every single tag in every state is selling out within record numbers, and Idaho is raising their prices on tags going into next year, from what I've been told. And so everything says the opposite. And I was talking to them at Leupold, and they're like, hey, we have metrics that show that that's not true, which I have said for 3 years. Yeah, I don't believe it. I'm not seeing this major decline.
The Orange Army is out there in force.
Based on what? We actually did a podcast on some metrics that we got from, I can't remember which magazine. It was an NPR
piece.
There was NPR, and then we pulled data in. And what it showed was
shooting Bambi to save Mother Earth.
That's right. That podcast. And what was really interesting about it was, well, although you might have a major decrease in the number of hunters in, say, let's say New York, you've had an increase in Texas. And I feel like a lot of this is regionally you've had declines, but you've had increases regionally in other areas. And a part of it is just, look, the baby boomers are dying.
Yep.
We have a huge population of human beings that have rippled through society from birth and have affected the toy market,
Everything.
The car market, and then later the old people car market, and then, old folks' homes, and then they die, and then we're back to normal levels of population. So, having them come through the hunting world and then decline, and part of that's just population change, people dying, not necessarily a cultural change. So anyway, moving on. I purchased the Summit GTX boot in March of 2019. This is Rick Harris, for elk shed hunting trip to the Black Hills in South Dakota in April. Everything you said about the lightweight, waterproof, and comfort right out of the box was true. However, now after wearing these boots all summer, The heel has worn down to the point I can't wear them anymore. Come on, who has the means to pay $300 on a pair of boots that last 6 months? In dealing with customer service rep, I was told that the wear is due to my personal stride. So in other words, they wore out because I walked in them. Very disappointing in what I thought was a reputable company and product. Don't buy these boots if you have personal stride issues. So these boots, it looks like he got them in March, and hunted a lot in them, loved them. That's an interesting comment because, they say a pair of boots should be replaced every 500 to 1,000 miles. The question is how many miles got put onto these boots? I would assume a lot of miles in order to wear a heel down. I've worn my Crispy Nevadas for 2,000 miles until the rubber was gone on the bottom. I didn't feel like they did what they were supposed to do. They serviced me for the miles I was walking. So I don't know. I've had the same pair of Summits for like 3 years, and I put tons of miles on them, and I haven't had the heel wear down before. So I don't know how he's walking to cause that. And I don't know what Crispy should do in this regard, because if you wear out a pair of boots, you wore them out. Now, $300 for a pair of boots that only lasted 6 months doesn't seem right. I haven't had that experience. I wonder what the heel looks like. I'd like to see more and hear more about what that looks like. But everything that I've seen with Crispy has been exceptional. And from people loving their boots to them customer service, replacing and taking care of people when they have product failures. Wear and tear on a boot because it's got 1,000 miles on it, that's part of the boot aging, and wearing down. So I don't know what a personal stride issue is.
My guess is he's a big heel striker, or he drags his heel or scuffs it. I don't know. I walk funny. I'm lopsided naturally. My body, I get on the outsides of all my shoes, always wear down first. And so my shoes become slanted at an angle. And so as I'm standing, my feet will put pressure on the outside walls, and I bust out my shoes from the outside walls. And it's just because of how I walk. Well,
I think you've got to replace, again.
They're like tires. Your tire is not infinite.
No, but it should last longer than 6 months in general, even if you walk funny.
Or every day.
Yeah, it depends on mileage. Really, at the end of the day, it's mileage. If you walked 100 miles and you had that problem, the boot didn't do its job.
Yeah.
If you went 500 or 1,000, that's pretty reasonable. I think depending on the boot you buy, like I've done 2,000 miles on the Nevada, and I have beat the ever-living daylights out of that boot, and it just has kept going. But it got to a point where at 2,000 miles, that was about as far as it could go. And I did that in I think a year and a half. But if I wore it funny, I suppose I could break it down in 6 months if I was hiking a lot, for sure. But that doesn't seem right. What I would say is that the Crispy Summit is a much lighter boot. It's built to be a lighter weight. It's built to be more like a tennis shoe, not a heavy duty boot. You step up to the Crispy Nevada or the Wild Rock, you're dealing with a boot that is going to last years and years. Now, it's a $400 boot, not a $300 boot. But for example, if you buy a Laponia, like what Lampers has, it's a soft boot. It's pretty light. He'll wear that sole off in a year, 6 months. Ryan will make that boot into a useless boot very quickly. But he's buying a more tennis shoe-like boot. If you want a boot that's going to be durable and last a long time, you got to buy the stiffer, heavier duty boot. And maybe that Summit just isn't a heavy duty enough boot for what you're doing. Another boot that feels a lot like the Summit is the Colorado. And that boot is just built tougher. But it's got a Brickstall sole, and it's got the ABSS ankle support, and it's a lot stiffer than the Summit. Each boot has its drawbacks, but if you're going to wear like a Loa Zephyr or a type of really tennis shoe like lightweight boot or the Crispy Laponia, it's just not going to be the same kind of durable boot as a Crispy Nevada. I love my breakdown on the Crispy boots. I love to wear the Laponia all the time. If I'm packing out a heavy pack, I am not wearing that boot. Lampers loves it. I will break an ankle. I love the Colorado, which has basically a synthetic upper, breathes really well. It's cool. It's not really insulated, but it's got that stiff brickstall sole. If I'm hunting goats or steep country and it's hot, I really like that crispy Colorado. When I'm hiking these mountains right here behind the office on the Wasatch, people see it on my IG story. It's a great boot. When I'm hiking, I use it on my elk hunt. Didn't like it. It's too stiff. Too many flat trails, too many rolling hills. It was too stiff for that terrain, and it gave me a lot of fatigue and discomfort. So I switched back to the Nevada. I just go back to the Nevada for 90% of my hunts. It's the Nevada. It just kind of is the shoe that does it all for me. Once the leather is supple, and I really wear a 10.5, and I wore a 10.5 when I first got them, but they shrink. They shrink too much. Because they're leather. So this time I got all my Crispies in size 11 instead of 10.5. I just went a half size bigger than what feels comfortable with my normal hiking socks. And after about after a few months and a little bit of shrinkage, these boots feel like the perfect size for me. And they continue. I can see them lasting forever because they fit right. They've shrunk a little bit. I kind of accounted for that. The Brickstall is a great boot. People love that. It doesn't shrink really because it's a synthetic upper. It's got that stiff sole. It's too stiff for me again, unless I'm doing, and I can't see a world where I'd choose the Brickstall over the Colorado, given the two options.
Doesn't the Colorado have the ABS ankle bracing system, and the Brickstall doesn't?
I don't know about that, but people love, everyone I know that has a Brickstall swears by it. So
half the people in the office wear those.
Boots are such an individual thing. And that's where Crispy's killing it, man. They have a ton of different options. So the other boot that I like is the Wild Rock. Is that what it's called? Wild Rock?
I think so.
It's a taller boot is the one I've got, and it's super insulated, and it's perfect for super cold late season hunts, especially where you're sitting around glassing a lot. And that one's also leather. It's like the Nevada, but just warmer.
It's the Crispy Wild Rock GTX.
Yeah. So that boot, like I would struggle late season when it was, 20 degrees and you'd sit there glassing for 3 hours and your feet would just get cold. And once I switched to the Wild Rock, I was like, oh man, so much nicer. So I would hate that boot when it's warmer because it's just too hot. So there's a boot for each job, but the all-around boot is the Nevada for me. That's what I used on the second half of my elk season from mid-November to the end of November. From mid-September to the end of September. So, Behind the Bow said, I have shot 3 deer with my Valkyrie setup. There has been no blood on the arrow or head due to the arrow sticking into the ground. Do you have the same issue? I responded to him.
Is he in a tree stand shooting down?
Probably. But I have experienced that with the Valkyrie setup, unless I hit a major artery or something, I don't get the kind of blood you're used to getting if you shot an expandable or even some other broadheads. But the one thing about it is there's always 2 holes, and it's always coast to coast. If you're hunting really thick country, though, you might consider, for blood trail's sake, because it's so hard to find something that doesn't bleed. And if it goes 25 yards, you can, have a hard time finding it in some country, some thick areas. Man, it's having one that just causes massive amounts of blood so you can find the animal is something to consider. But most of the time, I'm not hunting that kind of country. It's more open. And I know the animal's going to die for sure. And there's certain shots that would not end in death, through a shoulder bone or some leg if I was shooting a different broadhead. So everything comes with its pros and cons. For me, though, it's tough to beat that Valkyrie. All right. Jose Chung, 21. He said, Brian, I think you've been really improving as a hunter and as a person. You face some real challenges, but you keep overcoming them. I was a little disappointed about this episode as I was hoping to hear you discuss more the challenges, considerations, and mental game of solo hunting. This is a mental block for me that I think lots of guys have. If you could address it at some point, I think it would be of wide appeal. Also, what you'd recommend as far as vehicles and vehicle setup suited to the type of hunting you do. Keep up the great work. So he's talking about the episode I did on my solo elk hunt, like what I learned. I think, when it comes to the mental part of it, because he's like, he has a mental block for this kind of thing, doing it solo. The challenges, the considerations, the mental game. We talk about mental game all the time. Cameron Hanes did a podcast the other day with Joe, and he was talking about his son Truett on the Joe Rogan Experience. It was an interesting podcast. He's like, Truett and him ran a 100-mile race. So he's running the race. They're running the race together, and ends up Truett gets 91 miles or something on the race. And Joe's like, didn't he like blow out his knee or like hurt his ankle? And Cam's like, yeah, I whatever. And he's like, well, didn't he like have an injury or something that stopped him and blah, blah, blah. And Cam's like,
hey, stop me.
Maybe. But no, he had a mental breakdown. He just wasn't mentally tough enough, And Joe's like, well, there's a physical barrier. And Cam's like, no, it's just mental. So that's creepy.
So savage.
He's like, he said he came by the car a few times because it was a loop that they were running.
Yeah. You just have to do X amount under time.
He stopped and he just was resting for a little bit, and Cam would come by the truck and be like, hey, what are you doing? You run out of time. Get this race done, and ended up getting like 91 miles. And he's like, dude, you know what, Joe? That's amazing. He did 91 miles. 91 miles. Can you even imagine running 91 miles like that? It's incredible. It's so tough for people to do. It was 91 miles, but it wasn't 100.
I love it. But it wasn't 100.
But it wasn't 100, and he's reminding Truett all the time, like, you couldn't go 9 more miles? You couldn't 8-9 miles and you couldn't do it? Like, that's all you had?
That's going to haunt him.
And he said,
and then he's going to have a dad parroting that and haunting him.
Well, and then he said, the problem with the last 9 miles is you got to run the first 91 to get to those.
Yeah.
And then you quit. Right or wrong. Rihanna said this on a podcast too. She and Cam are good friends and they talk here and there. And, she was saying since being around Cameron Hanes, she's realized for herself, she's killed some elk on solo hunting and she's done some. She's a legit bow hunter, the real deal. And she's like, it's mental. It's mental. I've learned from Cam that it's not about my physical abilities. Like, I have a strong body. It's about my mind and my self-talk and my mindset and what I believe about myself. That's totally different than just, am I physically prepared? And I see it. I see that stuff where people, like my cousin Ben has been one of those people who has neglected his fitness, neglected his health, been kind of lazy, annoyingly, irresponsible about, diet, but has been able to, in spite of that, just
power through,
mentally do things that make me frustrated because I'm like digging deep and Ben's like just doing. And it's because he just mentally could tap into this well of toughness. And I see the same thing with Anthony. We did that podcast recently with Anthony talking about just him dealing with the pain in his back and struggles he's going through physically, and how I just do not see the average human being willing to pay the piper to do what he wants to do. But it's just a mental toughness that he has and the sort of thing he's trying to instill in his children. And keep that in mind, because mental toughness is what gets you through life, because it's going to be hard. You're going to hit these challenges. these physical challenges we put in front of us, like some, epic hunt in gnarly country, being able to accomplish that is a mental deal. And I think, you do it piece by piece and bit by bit. Mental toughness just doesn't come because you decide it. You have to pay the long hours of suffering to develop it. You have to push yourself, like Cam said, you can only get to the last 8 miles if you go to the first 91, right? You can't develop that last 9 miles of toughness unless you do the first 91, right? So that's the thing about mental toughness is you're building it 20 miles and then it's like, well, 20, I'm going to go 25, and then you build from that. But if you're going to go to 40, you got to go to 35 first. And to be able to mentally overcome that stuff, I think you have to set goals and you got to push through. And the only way you know if you're going to be able to do it, the only way you know if it can happen is if you actually stick it out when you get to the part where it gets hard. Like I like this quote where a guy says, "Look, for a savage, for an animal, for an athlete, the workout doesn't even begin until the pain arrives. It doesn't even start. And so if the fitter you are, your workout doesn't even start till you've done the 90 miles or the 50 miles, whatever that is for you. Workout doesn't even begin because it's when the pain arrives that you're really finding out what you're capable of and what you can do and where you're headed. And so I feel like I don't know what the answer is. It's just.
I think of when people ask about mental toughness. Do you remember Tony the Fridge?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember his quote about the little voice inside?
For people who don't know, there's a great podcast of Tony the Fridge on Barbell Shrugged. And this dude straps a refrigerator to his back.
He is from
Scotland, I believe.
And
if he's Irish, I'm sorry.
That's why I didn't want to say. I don't want to say he's from Ireland.
Same difference.
I think he's Scottish.
Yeah, I do too.
Because there's some mental thing in there that's
because he's a little more ginger and angry than.
There's definitely some anger. No one puts a fridge on their back and then goes and does what he does.
And some of this was for cancer awareness. He's a freak. He's an interesting guy.
He runs marathons with a refrigerator strapped to his back.
Yep.
He doesn't just run a marathon
across the world.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's phenomenal what he's done. But again, he's not like, Arnold Schwarzenegger looking,
No, he's little.
This is mental, purely mental, man. He's
taken twice as many steps as I am.
And listening to him talk about how he does it. And don't get me wrong, like I struggle with this all the time. I'm mentally tougher now by heaps and bounds than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But life, Cam mentioned this on that show. He's like, a lot of young people have trouble doing these marathons because life hasn't kicked them in the teeth enough. Because they haven't had to go through losing someone to death or to cancer. They haven't had to go through a betrayal or a loss of some kind. They haven't had to have a very debilitating physical setback or whatever it is. The older you get, the tougher you seem to get because otherwise you give up. You just give up. Life is tough. And it's funny because they do these a lot of people who win these marathons tend to be older people. Yet their bodies aren't nearly qualified to do it as a 20-year-old or 25-year-old. Yet that's not where it's at. They just don't have the mental fortitude yet.
I think a lot of it with most self-mastery in life, whether it's running a marathon, waking up at a certain time, or telling yourself no to food. It's self-talk. Tony, the Fridge, I don't know, would you call him Tony or just Mr. Fridge? But Tony talks about how everyone's got a little voice inside of him that says, slow down, this hurts, calm down, don't do it, let's go home, stop. And he tells that voice every time it opens its mouth, before he doesn't even let it get to say the words. He tells it to shut up.
Yeah. I think he says something more colorful.
He does.
Being Scottish and all.
I scrubbed it. Yeah. But basically, I think it's self-talk. I think that's the answer, is that there's a level of mastery that only comes from being able to tell yourself no.
Rihanna talked about that. One of the things I've told myself for years, and it seems to work for me, is I say it's just work.
It's only for a little bit.
It's just work.
It's going to hurt for a little.
I don't say that. I don't acknowledge that it hurts at all.
Oh, really?
I just say it's just work. It's just work. That's it. It's only work.
That's the next level I got to
Because when I go and do a CrossFit WOD and it's just a grind, it's 30 minutes long and I'm 20, 15 minutes in, it's like, look, it's just work. The work will be over. When it's done, it's done. It's just work. Work never killed you, unless you were in Auschwitz. But I mean, there's... Okay, it can't kill you, but generally speaking,
it's a hefty level of work that's going to kill you.
Right. Most of the time, it's just you don't want to do it.
You can handle it for a day. You can handle it for a week.
You don't want to do it anymore. But at the end of the day, it's just work. That's it. It's fine.
There's another half of that question, though, from Jose Chung.
Oh, the one about
vehicles.
He also said, what do you recommend as vehicles and vehicle setup suited to the type of hunting you do? It's funny. I have wanted a Jeep for eons.
They're pretty sweet.
I want a Jeep. Anthony
has a Jeep.
A little 2-door Jeep. I've talked about how I want to get a Jeep for myself because my wife won't let me have or use hers. Now I'm just trying to talk her into giving me her Jeep, and I'll go get her a new one.
Hey.
One that's more appropriate for her soccer mom lifestyle.
For the road.
Yeah.
You bought your wife a Rubicon.
Because I bought her a Rubicon. It's got like 410 gears. It's horrible on the road. It rattles at like 60 miles an hour. It needs giant tires. It's got heavy-duty axles.
It weighs a ton.
Like everything about it was really for me, and then she wouldn't let me touch it. So I'm like, all right. Let's get you one that's geared for the highway, that's got all these fancy whatever for you. And
all the bells and whistles.
No, just like the zippy engine, or something. I don't know. Whatever she wants, I don't care. I want her Jeep. So, but honestly, I've had a number of Jeeps, and a 2-door Wrangler goes everywhere. It's just incredible where they go, whether it's a YJ, TJ, or anything. So Anthony has a little Wrangler. It's a hunk of junk. I don't know what it is. It's like it's old, and it's just a 2-door Wrangler, and he just attaches that to his Ford F-150.
Just drags it around
and just tows it in neutral wherever he goes, and then when he gets there, he can just cruise around. I'm going to do the same thing. I like my truck. You can pack all the gear in it, throw an elk in it, and it's so nice on the road. It's quieter. Jeep is kind of louder. But you can tow a UTV or a 4-wheeler or something like that, or you can just throw your Jeep on the back.
And let's be real, there's nothing more American than stripping that thing down, taking the doors and the roof off, and just cruising down the freeway.
Yeah, and what I like about the Jeep is, like I said, they go everywhere, and it tows behind the truck really well. It's non-load bearing on the tail on the hitch because it's on all 4 wheels. I don't know.
I've got a 4-door Sport.
Jeep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I got my Thule on the top, and I've got what are those things? Those canvas cutters. I got 2 canvas cutters in the top in there at all times. So it doesn't really matter wherever I'm at, whether I'm at a rest stop or if I'm out in the woods. I've got my canvas cutters, pitch tent wherever. I
get it though. People love their side by sides. They love their 4-wheelers. A lot of the hunts I do are super late season, and it gets to be 20 degrees or 10 degrees outside, or even below 0. I hate being on a 4-wheeler when it's that cold. I hate it. And a UTV costs as much as a Jeep if you want it all heated. For real, dude.
And Papa needs his heater.
Yeah. And so I just look at it, I'm like, there are some places those things can go that a Jeep can't. But generally speaking, for what I do, the Jeep gets me there.
I got these genetically arthritic hands, and they need a nice little heater to set by to keep them in motion.
Totally. I don't know. Plus, Jeeps are just cool to drive around town and play with, and so
I would like to say my wife dated me, and she would have still dated me without the Jeep, but I'm not confident enough to say that.
I know. There's something about it. Okay, next question. Sheer Will Survival says, Brian, I like the GSI water bottle, but was wondering about water slosh while walking. Do you keep it full till glassing site and drink it till empty before moving? That's my thought. We used to run a buckle strap around our Camelback water bladders to tighten as we drank to keep them from making slosh sounds while walking. So, what I found was when I ran the Stone Glacier pack with the water bottle holder, it does it diagonally or kind of horizontal. It lays the bottle down and it slides in kind of under your armpit. Mm-hmm. And that water sloshes and it makes noise. And because the GSI water bottle, for people who don't know, it's GSI Microlight. Get it at like REI. It's a lightweight water bottle, and it keeps your liquid hot or cold for like 20 hours.
It's like a thermos water bottle. It's vacuum
Well, it's about
sealed.
the size. It's the same style and size and lid and all that as an Nalgene. So
and it's only a couple more ounces. It's not that much more.
I love it because my water can't freeze in it when it dips below freezing. I love it because it can keep my water cold on a hot summer day. When I get it out of the water, I like drinking a chilled drink.
And I just hate drinking out of plastic.
And when there's a hot day or super cold day, I can put hot liquids in it, like, hot chocolate, Ignite chocolate, whatever it is. And you drink a hot drink while you're sitting there glassing and it's 10 degrees. It's freaking nice.
My wife and I were glassing and she brought some Pero. Because my wife doesn't do stimulants of any kind. So she made this knockoff ditch water coffee. So gross. But she was real happy. It was still hot 2 hours later when we stopped and glassed.
So I like that bottle for those reasons. Any water bottle has the potential to slosh, even a bladder if it's not done right. And so I actually like the water bottle being, I like having that water bottle, okay? Now, since then, I mentioned it on the gear dump we did a while ago. If you I took my Stone Glacier pack and then I take the Seek Outside water bottle holder.
I like that water bottle holder.
And I do like that holder, and I stuck it on my Stone Glacier pack, and it's perfect for my water bottle. And it's now holding that GSI water bottle upright on my hip. I can access it more easily. I love it. I love it there.
It has a drawstring on the top.
It has a drawstring that tightens it.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
And it's a little oversized, so you can put various size bottles in the holder.
There's nothing worse than when you have
size.
that water bottle holder on your belt, and it's so tight, you got to mash it in there.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah, it drops right in. You just put the Velcro or the bungee strap on it. So I like it doesn't slosh that much. Even when it's half full, it doesn't slosh that much. When it's vertical and it's upright, like on your hip, it doesn't make doesn't make too much noise. But if I'm really worried about it, especially if I'm bow hunting, I'm going to just dump it out or drink it and run it empty. And then when I'm ready to have a drink, I drink, because I always have like the Platypus, a little bit of water in it in my pack. If I'm not near water. If I have water everywhere, I just fill, drink, dump it out. Fill, drink, dump it out as I hike throughout the day. And just next time I'm near water, I get some and then I ditch it. So, but if I'm in an area where it's tough to get water, I carry a bladder. And then I just make sure in the bladder there's no air in it ever. And then I fill the bottle, drink it, and then anything left over, let's say I don't want to drink the whole bottle, but I don't want to dump the water out on the ground, I just dump it back into the Platypus and then just filter it again the next time I put it in the bottle. So you can just go back and forth between your water bottle and your bladder throughout the day, and you're not ever ditching water, but you can keep your bottle empty if you are on a stock or whatever. So I got to fill it up all the way to use the SteriPen, because you can't dip the SteriPen in there enough to sterilize it.
It won't even turn on.
Right, because it's got the prongs and the sensor. So I fill it up all the way, sterilize it.
Those instructions, when I had mine, it was not clear on that. It took me like 20 minutes to get the darn thing working.
So, you fill that water bottle up all the way. You sterilize it with the UV light. Drink half of it. Let's say that's all you want. Then I dump it right back into the Platypus, empty the air out. It's back in my pack. I'm hiking with an empty bottle. One thing I will say is, if I am worried about noise and I'm stalking an elk or something, I take that metal bottle and I put it inside my backpack, because when it's on your belt hip and you set it, let's say there's an elk right there and you're ditching your pack because it's 30 yards away, and you lay your pack down and then the metal bottle hits a rock as your belt strap like slips, bing. You don't want to be busted like that. That's the case with any bottle. Anything exterior on your pack that could make noise as you take your pack off, I just put it inside my pack and don't have it on my hip. But, for most conditions, it's fine right there. But if I'm cruising on a stock and everything, we talked about that earlier, Ryan and I, the other day, and I talked about it with Bryce, actually, from Sissy Sticks. Mm-hmm. Having a collapsible bottle is kind of what I'd rather have in that scenario.
And just keep the GSI in your pack?
Just keep it in my pack, and then you have that collapsible bottle, or even, you don't even need it under certain conditions. It can be back at your tent or whatever, your base camp. It depends how you're running your hunt that day. But it is nice to have a secondary small collapsible, because Ryan's water bottle looks like an Nalgene, but it's like it's like a collapsible plastic. Mm-hmm. And so you can pull that, he can fill it up just like an Nalgene, mix his thing in it, and then he can slip it right back in his pocket when he's done with it.
Yep.
Or into it. It's just collapsible. It's pretty cool. So that's how I handle sloshing water. Not sure if this was in a prior podcast, says Nicholas Strange, but why do you shoot the knock to it? I'm looking at switching to a thumb release, but I'm not sure which would be best for hunting. So I've gone through hell and back using release aids. Mm-hmm. And part of it was a little peer pressure, idealism, and so on. But, hanging out too much with Dudley, talking too much with other guys about archery, old school people who are excellent shooters. So I ran, what I'll say is when I really started to improve my shooting was when I switched from a trigger release, an index finger release with the wrist rocket, wrist wrap, index finger release. I switched away from that to a hinge release. Phil Mendoza at No Limits Archery, from John Dudley and other guys I respect that hunt. Me trying to improve my shot. When I use a hinge release and I'm back there, I don't quite know when the shot will go off. With a trigger, you have a tendency to time when the pin intersects with where you want to shoot. You just punch the trigger. And that just causes a lot of bad results.
Doesn't Cam shoot a trigger?
A lot of people, well, that's what the thumb button is. It's still a trigger. Mm-hmm. So let me finish my story. I prefer the hinge release, indoor shooting, or just for practicing, because it forces me to aim. It forces me to focus on aiming and good shooting technique, because I never know when the shot's quite going to break, when it's going to go. So I don't get shooter anxiety either. It takes all the anxiety out of the shot, because it's it's just going to go off when it goes off. I'm just pulling through. Joe Rogan talked about the silverback he uses. It's just a back tension release. The more pressure he pulls, it goes off. He doesn't quite know when it's going to go off. It's based on pounds of pressure. So it's the same concept. His is a true back tension release. A hinge is on a half moon, and as you rotate the hinge a little bit, as you pull through, it causes the release to let go of the string and fire the arrow. So
that sounds terrifying.
Both of those are sort of a way to shoot your bow, and it just forces you to develop better skills at holding the bow steady, keeping the pin lined up, staying on task, not mentally breaking down, right? Mm-hmm. And then when the shot goes, it goes, and you're shocked at how tight your groups are when that happens, because it's really how we ought to shoot our bows. But in a live animal situation, I have so much adrenaline coursing through my veins. I'm ripping the wheels off the cams. I pull so much harder in that moment, and you can't just tell me to calm down. That's just what happens, dude. Mm-hmm. My adrenaline is ridiculous. My dad can lift up a car when he has adrenaline. He's the Hulk.
No one has adrenaline spikes like Dad.
Dad is off the charts, and then he has to take a dump right afterward. When everything's calm, it's like, whoa, bowels are done. They're just letting go. So there's genetic components to everyone. We're all a little different. My hands and feet sweat like crazy.
Same.
That animal comes
That's
poking
the
out.
worst.
So I'm ripping the wheels off. I feel like when I've used a knock or a silverback like Rogan, I pull back. The arrow just goes because I have so much pressure pulling the bow back. A hinge, I grip it so tight, I can't get it. I have an iron claw. I can't get the hinge to rotate. And then the shot's not going off. The shot's not going on. And then the animal's walking. So I think everybody's archery journey is different. You figure out what works for you. The ironic thing here is I always killed animals when I just punched a trigger with the index release. It wasn't until I started shooting a hinge that I missed stuff. And Ryan Lampers would make fun of me for using it because he's like, why? You were fine with the other tool. Why switch? So it was just, I did really like being able to stack arrows at 100 yards. And I could do that with the hinge. I never could get that accuracy with the trigger, but I crush 50 yards and under, and that's pretty much how I shoot animals. So with the thumb button, it's kind of a blend because now I'm not punching a trigger. I have the same kind of anchor point and holding position when I'm at full draw because it mimics the style of a hinge, right? So I can practice with a hinge. And then when I go hunt, I can use a device that has a trigger where your thumb is, but still pulls and anchors the same way a hinge does. That way, it doesn't feel too different. It feels almost the same, only now I can just punch the trigger. And there are people who hate punching the trigger, or I say pull through, because when I wrap my thumb around that trigger and there's an animal there, I can just barely, I just stick that pin where I want it. I'm holding. I just barely pull through and it goes off. I don't have to rotate anything. I don't have to use any kind of certain amount of back tension. I just put my thumb on there and go. And if an animal is walking and I cow call and stop a bull, stops, punch. I can just time those two things. And because I practice so much with a hinge, I have those good aiming habits and the holding and the pick a spot, stick it right there, hold it. I have all those things dialed and then I just punch it. So I kind of blend the two habits, kind of blend the whole.
So long story short, you practice so you have form with the hinge.
Yes.
And then while hunting, you tend to take out a trigger.
Yep. The thumb trigger.
Thumb trigger.
Yeah. I find that I kind of have bad habits that are unbreakable with an index finger release. Plus, it doesn't anchor the same way.
Yep.
It doesn't, you're way out here. The string comes to the caliper sticks out differently. It's not anchored back in the same spot. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Great question. I think people should switch to thumb releases. I love them. But like I said, I think everyone should practice with a hinge. So my cousin Ben is using a hinge right now because he has such bad target panic. And he has been able to, he's like, Brian, I just have so much confidence with a hinge. I just stack arrows. They just go off and hit the target. There's no doubts. It just goes and goes and goes and goes. But in a hunting situation, he struggled getting a shot off. He should have killed a bull a couple times this year, but again, it's a whole lot different when you're got the iron claw and your adrenaline's pounding. It's a lot easier. It's a lot harder to rotate that. So I think for Ben's case, he's in the same boat. It might do him some good to keep practicing with that hinge, but see if a thumb button, in limited use, I try not to shoot the thumb all that often because I can go back to having bad habits. So I just hunt.
Is that your secret? You barely shoot your bow and then just go out?
No, I shoot it piles with a hinge, but I barely shoot it with the triggers. Just a couple of shots here and there just to know that I'm on.
Still on.
But I shoot with the hinge all the time because the hinge gives me, it forces me to shoot with the right technique. Joel Turner will say it doesn't matter. You just use a mental, you deliberately make each shot go off perfectly. I know what he means, and I at any point you should be able to decide not to shoot during the course of the shot and then just let down. And that's really hard, actually, for a lot of people. Once it's back, it's going no matter what.
Yeah, full send.
But I just find that the hinge allows me to, like I said, be better at aiming. I'm going to get Joel on the podcast, and we'll get his take on it. He'll mock me for what I do. But like Ryan Lamper said to me, all you have to do is be accurate to 40 yards. Really accurate. And you can really punch the hell out of a trigger and be accurate at 40 yards.
Yeah, you can.
And there's a lot of advantages to punching a trigger, period. Get that pin in the vicinity and slam it. Okay, I'm no archer, but I kill animals since I've gotten rid of that frickin' hinge. Okay, looking at buying a new pack, what would you recommend for Northern British Columbia moose hunt, Stone Glacier Sky Talus 6900 or Kifaru Muskeg 7000? Love the Gear Dump episodes. That's Veld RB13. Brent's trying to get me in trouble here. Brent picked all these questions, by the way. I had no idea what they are.
I didn't name them.
So, for Northern British Columbia, one of my favorite Kifaru packs is the Muskeg 7000 because I like the pack material. Seek Outside uses the same pack material. In fact, they started using it before Kifaru did. I like the pack material. It does a great job of keeping everything waterproof. It doesn't absorb moisture when you're out there. Therefore, your pack doesn't gain 5 pounds of water weight when it gets soaking wet. Ugh. There's a lot of advantages to it. The only time I would consider using that Muskeg, though, is probably in an extremely wet weather hunt like a Kodiak or maybe Northern BC if it's going to be like a rainy period. But I feel like there's a lot of drawbacks to it because for me, having used extensively all the Kifaru line and using the Stone Glacier, for me, the Stone Glacier pack just straps to my back and sticks better than the Kifaru does. So with my Kifaru, and I've had this discussion many times with folks at Kifaru, my back is flat. It's really flat. And I think that the way that pack straps on, it just slides down. And I've talked to a lot of guys that have the same problem. Anthony has the same problem. When we got back from our elk hunt on that 7x7 bull that his son shot, his back was bleeding. His low back down by the tailbone around where the pad rubs. And it's been like that for years. And so when he straps it on, he's adjusted it and he's got different frames from me and we've tried different things. But same thing for me. When I wear a Kifaru pack, if I tighten the hip belt how I want it tightened so it doesn't slide, it cuts off the circulation to my lower extremities. Then if I loosen it, it slides off my butt and pulls my pants down. I'm always stopping to pull my pants back up, tighten my belt, and strap it back on. That said, it's still an incredible pack. And this is only with ridiculous loads, 90 plus pounds, 100, 110, where this happens to me. But that's when I want the pack to fit the best. When I got the Stone Glacier, I was really skeptical of it. But the lumbar pad, the way the hip belt goes on, it just sucks right down, doesn't cut any circulation off. It fits really well. It never slides. It never moves. The shoulders, everything really fits super, super dialed. So for me, if I'm going to be carrying heavy loads, it's just so much more comfortable to carry the Stone. And I've talked to a bunch of guys who've done some backpack reviews and used all the different ones as well, Lampers too. And they all agree that the Stone Glacier is probably the easiest to fit on any back. It just fits. Now, I've talked to a few people who said if you have a curved back, in their opinion, these are some guys I really trust, they think the Kifaru is probably the most comfortable. But it's just edging out the Stone by a little bit. Now, I've talked to him too that the Stone Glacier bag has worn holes in the bottom of it. The Kifaru I've done the same hardcore hunts and I've never got a hole in the bottom of the bag. It's worth it to me. In order to have the comfort, I'll fix the hole. I'll get it sewn shut. I'll fix it. So, but everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a different fit. Really, mine is I want to wear the most comfortable pack that fits me. So
when you're going deep into the backcountry, comfort's number one for me.
Especially
comfortable
with the miles I've covered this year and the hunts I've done this year and the loads I've carried, there's a big difference between what I'm able to carry now comfortably using a Stone versus when I used the Kifaru. And again, everybody's anatomy is a little different. And so that might not be true. But like I said, everyone agrees that Stone Glacier is probably the easiest one to fit on any back. And it's incredibly comfortable. Now, one of the guys I talked to recently who is a stud, he's like, you got to try the new XO because he thinks it might be up there. It's just one of the best packs out there. So that's another one to consider. And I haven't got my hands on it and really put it through, but Ryan likes it. But he did tell me he has to agree with me that Stone Glacier just sticks to your back. It just doesn't move. Once you strap it on with those stupid loads and you start going, it just stays where it's supposed to stay and it feels good. So again, unless I try that XO, I think the XO has a lot of throwbacks to what the Kifaru has. So unless they change some things, I don't know if it's going to fit me and feel as good. I just can't say enough good things about the Sky Talus 6900. I love that size too, because Ryan has like the next one up, like the 7500 or 79. Mm-hmm. It's just too big. Lampers thinks it's great. I think it's just too big, and I don't like the baffle set, the zip up setup. I prefer two equal baffles on the side than kind of the way that other one works. And I like to be able to strap my bow across the back. I like the zipper that goes down the entire length of the center. It reminds me of a Kifaru Reckoning, which I really liked that pack.
Can you explain baffle when you say baffle?
Like on the side, there's like two zip pockets, big zip pockets that are vertical. You can put a spotter in there, a 400 millimeter lens, And
these are separate from the main pack?
Yeah, the main compartment in the backpack. Yeah, I like it. It's clean. So for me, I would recommend the Stone Glacier Sky Talus 6900 over the Muskeg because of how well it carries massive loads. But if you're dealing with heavy water, you're hunting the Northwest.
Well, it's a British Columbian moose hunt.
Yeah, there's that pot, but that's the thing. Moose hunt, are you packing it out on horses or are you packing it out on back?
Yeah.
Because I would trade the fact that I got to cover the pack with a rain fly and have the comfort than have it be waterproof and not the comfort. But if I'm maxing out at 60 or 70 pounds, that Mustang, could be good. Or if you have a curved back, maybe Kifaru fits you like a dream. Mm-hmm. Then get the Kifaru. All right, I think this should be the last question.
Yep.
You think? We've covered quite a bit. Last question is Troy Westerber. Love Troy. He's always leaving comments and asking questions, and he's awesome. He says, how do you like that bino harness? I just got an Alaskan Guide Max. I was considering the ADAC, but went the other way. I haven't had it out in the field yet, but next week I will. Then I can really tell you what I like and don't like about it. The one I was using seemed to get loose all the time and really bothered me. The straps on most of them don't care for. I've used the ADAC now on 3 hunts, I think. Mm-hmm. I like it especially for a spot and stalk hunt where you're trying to be super quiet. The material doesn't rub up against brush, make noise. You can just put your thumb through that little loop and just kind of stretch, and it opens it with one hand operation. Got your bow in your left hand with an arrow in it. It just opens without making noise. You can look with the bino. It goes back in very easily. There's no buckles. There's no zippers. There's no magnets. Nothing to make it be noisy. You just close it right back in. It's deep enough that most binoculars don't fall out if you do leave the lid open and you lean over. Like my Sitka harness, I've dumped a bunch of binos out, including Randy Newberg's binos off a cliff.
Sorry, Randy.
So I like those aspects of it. It's not waterproof. It's going to get wet, but it's a pretty quick dry material.
It's an interesting material for sure.
Yeah. As far as the straps feel and how it fits on my chest, I can keep it up high on my chest, which I like. I don't like it when it stretches down to my belly. It irritates me. It's also pretty low profile. I've really moved away from the backpack on my chest type harnesses. I don't like them. I don't like the Alaskan Guide Creation ones. I feel like they're just too big. They're too much crap. I'm not tactical here. We're not going... I don't like it. So I like a small, compact chest harness.
Daisy wants the backpack on her chest. She wanted the binos, the rangefinder. She wanted a pack to put snacks in. She wanted a pack to put candy in. Like,
I have a backpack for that with straps, with belt pouches and stuff like that. I don't want it on my chest. When I'm sneaking in close and I'm maneuvering and you got that giant thing on your chest, it gets in the way. You start belly crawling. It's in the way. I just found it's not for me. But a lot of people love it. And I suppose if you're getting dropped in the Alaskan bush, if you're rifle hunting maybe in open country for Dall sheep, maybe it is. But I don't know. You have to crawl on your chest sometimes to get to a ledge. It's just a giant. I've used it for years. I used the Alaskan Guide, and I still recommend. I mean, still a great harness. It's fully enclosed. It's bulletproof. Does keep your binos dry in a way the ADAC does not. But overall, it's not me, man. It's not my thing. It's too big. And then, Ben wore it this year, and I mocked him the whole time, the Alaskan Guide, because it just keeps just heavy. It just
tipping forward,
just so heavy. It's down in your belly instead of on your chest. So, but for a later season hunt or a really wet hunt, I'd rather have maybe an FHF bino harness or a marsupial gear. This next hunt I'm going on with Lampers, I have a marsupial gear harness that I got from Leupold, and I've always been wanting to try that. It's got the magnet and stuff. It can interfere with your compass. It can interfere with, and you just have to know that it's there. It can make too much noise maybe, but again, I'm not sneaking up on an elk with this, with a bow or a deer. I'm rifle hunting this late season in the snow, and this harness fits so nice on your chest and feels so good. So I'm going to test the marsupial gear one and see how I like it. People love that thing. And so it'll be a good test. I've used Solo Hunter's bino harness, Tim Burnett's. I like that one. Ironically, I didn't think I would. It's not super fancy, but it's small, opens up real easy. Binos slip in and out. I used it on my Coues deer hunt last year and stuff. I like it. Simple. I think a lot of people get so,
people like gears and gadgets, dude.
Yeah, bino harnesses, I don't know. But I do like the ADAC the ADAC's kind of been my more liked one for bow hunting and spot and stock. And since bow hunting is more fair weather generally, and I'm not hunting in pouring rain and stuff much, it is I like it. I'll probably use it to hunt Coues deer this year because it's that kind of harness. But like I said, I want something that's going to protect my binos a little more in terms of, being a little more waterproof, when it's later. And I also like having a harness that's substantial in the way that I can strap things to it. Now, I do like how the ADAC has that little patch on the side. It allowed me to put your wife's gun on there. That carried the 9mm. It slid right onto that. If you were to try to mount her pistol on a strap around my chest, it just would fall over. Yeah. But because the ADAC has a little Velcro thing there, I was able to slip the gun there, and then I was able to put the rangefinder on the other side, and it did have like a mounting spot for it that worked pretty well. So I like that. If I had a 10mm, it's too big a gun. Using the 9, it was okay, but to run my 10mm, I'd need a different holster on my hip, probably or a Rasco gear. I want to interview those guys, see how their little holster, how that would hold my 10mm and how that would feel. And it mounts underneath your bino harness. And so you got your bino harness on, and then right under it, if you're right-handed, you got your pistol right there just to pull. That way, if you're ditching your pack, you're chasing some animals or whatever, you're in grizzly country, you've always got that thing right there at the ready. You never leave it on your hip belt like Remy Warren did when he and Ranella and everybody got attacked by that bear on Adak Island. So, anyway, that's my take. I prefer I don't like the Alaskan Guide. So sorry, Troy. Looks like you got the Max, but I'm not sure, I would like that. I don't like how it slides down. With all the harnesses, I think you ought to get them adjusted relatively close to how you want. and then tape them off or sew them in or make them so they can't be adjusted but more than an inch or two, depending on if you're wearing a jacket, a puffy or something in later season or not, because all those things slip. Or put locking buckles on it, get locking buckles and do that, because especially on the ones that are up high, because those just come loose and your vinyl harness is down by your crotch. And I hate that. So I think that's it. That's our Q&A session. Answered a bunch of questions. Hope that was helpful to people. So thanks for tuning in. We have films that are coming out in probably a month or so. So look forward to those. We're going to release 12 more, series films here in the next few months. So we have a lot of editing to do as soon as we wrap up a couple more hunts. So I'm excited to share that with everybody, because our other videos we've got almost 3.5 million minutes watched of just 8 films that we produced. Crazy engagement. People watch those things from start to finish once they get started. It just tells me that, we got some good films out there people are enjoying. So check those out. It's our tar hunt and our bear hunt, both of those. Use the code GRITTY to get free shipping at Mountain Ops. It's Opstober. Go check out Mountain Ops, see what kind of deals are out there. Go to Sissy Sticks and get 15% off pair of trekking poles. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and stay gritty.